Yes, we're live now.
You ready?
Yeah, let me just move my script a little. All right, there we go. So good morning, everybody. How's everybody this morning?
Good.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go to Mississippi. So by a show of hands, has anyone been to Mississippi? One. Just one? Okay, that's fine. So, in my research in this one state in the American Deep South, you will find some interesting things. So let's talk about that, shall we? So let's talk about the flag real quick. So this is a newer flag that they have. This was actually commissioned back in 2021, last year. So this time you have red right over here flanking the flag. You got gold bars down here. And then you have this flower right here. It's a white lotus. And you have the pale Canadian blue, and then you have the stars surrounding it. And on the bottom it says, "In God we trust." This is a slogan everywhere in U.S. culture, including our dollar bills. So if you ever take out a $1 bill, it's going to say on the bottom, "In God we trust." And the white lotus is the state flower of Mississippi. So if you ever go to Mississippi, you'll find white lotuses. Shall we move on to the next slide? So those of you who are wondering where Mississippi is, it is, well, not necessarily in the East Coast, but it's down in the deep South. Here it is, Mississippi down here.
Good try, though, Matt. Good try.
He's on the right track. Just need to aim a little lower. So it's surrounded by Alabama to the east, Tennessee to the north, Arkansas sort of to the northwest, and then you have Louisiana right over here. Hint, hint, click, click. We are going to go to some of these states later on. And then you have the Gulf Coast to the south. The reason why I bring up the Gulf Coast is because this is going to be pretty important as we move on. So the largest city in Mississippi, the capital of Mississippi is actually Jackson, but and it also happens to be the largest city. And Jackson would be somewhere about right in the middle, probably. So geographically speaking, it is lowlands. It has plains areas, and then you also have all these rivers that go through Mississippi. Anyone remember the Mississippi River? We might have talked about it a few weeks back. So the Mississippi River goes from the bottom and it branches out to states like Alabama, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Tennessee. So, oh yeah, a little bit of Georgia, just a tiny bit, but not necessarily. It doesn't reach that far. If anything, the Colorado River is much bigger than the Mississippi. But the Mississippi River has played a crucial role within American Southern history because it was used as a highway, it was used as a road, it was used as a border to separate different states. But prior to statehood, they were just basically territories. Climate-wise, you'll notice that a lot of places in the American South tend to be really hot and humid during the summer and spring times, but during winter and autumn, it's usually cold and there's rain. And depending on where you go, if you're able to find these places, there is snow. Even in Mississippi, there's a little bit, if you know where to look. Okay, so if we move on to the next slide, we're going to talk about some brief history. Here's an old map of what sort of the American South looked like, but Mississippi would be somewhere right over here. So long ago, before European colonization and settlement, this place was inhabited by Native Americans. And please forgive me for mispronouncing these names. This is a language I'm not familiar with. They were inhabited by the Tunakan, Chitamakchan, and Masukuyan people. They would usually live right around these rivers. Oh, thank you. And if you look here, this physical map, has all these rivers that, some of which are the Mississippi River. And these were the rivers that people would live alongside. Because as you'll know, civilizations are always built around waters. Remember that, people. Even the United States was built around water. When you look at the 13 colonies, they were built along the East Coast. Notice that there are a lot of coastlines. Even California was founded on a coastline. Anyone been to Santa Monica? Long Beach, Newport, San Diego. Notice that they are cities and communities built along the coastlines. There's your proof. Same thing with the Native Americans over here. And so so Mississippi was actually a territory at one point alongside the Louisiana Purchase. I don't know if we talked about this, but actually, yeah, we did sort of talk about it in Kansas. But the Louisiana Purchase was this massive stretch of territory, some of which encompassed Mississippi. And it wasn't until 1812 that's when Mississippi became a U.S. state. And so, to those of you who are wondering where the name comes from, that's a bit of a long story, but I will shorten it as much as possible. So bear with me on this one, because we're going to jump from 2 languages into 3. So first of all, the Mississippi comes from a French rendering, Mississippi, which then comes from the Anishinaabe word, Mississippi. And it was anglicized to Mississippi.
Was that with a Z?
Yeah, with a Z and with a B.
Wow.
So, like I said, transitioning from 2 languages into the anglicized English word Mississippi. So, that was a lot for me, and trust me when I say this, I studied languages before. This is really hard for me. So, let's talk about what Mississippi is known for, shall we? Remember the Gulf Coast I talked about?
Beautiful.
This is the Gulf Coast. So yes, there are cities built along the Gulf Coast, and yes, people have taken advantage of this place of creating resorts and a little beachfront homes. I don't know if you guys can see it. I wish I had a better picture. There's a there's a large house right over here.
That's beautiful.
It's small when you're up top, but
Yes.
come up close. This thing is a 3-story house, I think. And this house, I believe, from the research that I found, has 10 bedrooms.
Wow.
So people have built some very nice housing along the Gulf Coast.
Is that you driving in the car right
Nope.
there?
I wish.
I was like, how come you didn't pick us up?
Taxi. I mean, that could be the case. Do they have Uber in Mississippi?
We'll have to look that up.
Yeah. So let's talk about more about Mississippi. What else is known for? This is the great city of Oxford.
Yeah.
So, just so everyone is aware of, a lot of this information that I found was from a good friend of ours named Barbara. Remember her?
Yes. Remember Miss Barbara?
Yeah.
Yeah. The dance for Miss Barbara.
Shout out to Miss Barbara. So, because she is a native of Mississippi and she currently lives in this city of Oxford, and this was one of the first communities that she's told me about, it is the birthplace of writers and entertainers. People come here to record their music, blues musicians like Buddy Guy. So, yeah. You will find out that very quickly this place is where you get your start as a writer, as a musician, as an entertainer. And speaking of which, it's also pretty known for its little sports culture, as we're about to see in the next slide. So let me introduce you to the University of Mississippi. It is the most well-known school in the state. It's also the most well-known school in the city of Oxford. It's one of those schools that generalizes in different educations, business, education, healthcare, so on and so forth. Think of it like the biggest universities in your state, and that's pretty much what it is over here. What do we have here in California? USC, Stanbridge, right?
Yep.
Yeah, Stanbridge, UCLA. I could go on. So this is that kind of school, and you're probably wondering, what's so special about the school? Notable alumni are some of the members of the Manning family. Yes, like Eli Manning, Archie Manning.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, a football legacy was started here. Those are some of the more famous alumni. And
That's when you graduate from something. Like,
yeah,
if you guys graduated from here, they say that you were alumni of Elder.
yeah. So to those of you at home who didn't hear that, alumni is just basically a word for a graduate of a college or a university. So if anyone goes to a school, who are some famous graduates? Oh, this person over there. So yeah, Katie. Yeah, it's a very nice school. I would love to attend this school if I could. So let's talk about more. So, just so everyone knows, Mississippi does not have a professional sports team, but they are very well known for their college teams, like Ole Miss Rebels. So this is one of their teams, a football team. And just to give you a little statistics here, they have won 6 conference titles and 3 national titles. Yeah, I would say. And this school it just happens to be a rival of another school we're about to talk about in the next slide. Yep. This is Mississippi State University, not to be confused with the University of Mississippi. So, yeah, these two schools have been rivals practically since day one. We talked about school rivalry in New Mexico. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you know about college footballs, college, what do you call that? Varsity teams. Yeah, you'll know that these guys are rivals too. And while I was not able to find any stats on these guys, all I can tell you is that they have 16 varsity teams. So they include teams like football, baseball, soccer, and if you could fit a sport in a school, there you go.
Wow. What
Yeah.
other one, Shannon? Hockey, she said.
They don't have a hockey team. That's unfortunate.
You said they got golf.
They have golf.
And bowling.
Oh, I don't know about bowling.
No.
That-
Tennis.
Yeah, Matt.
Okay.
That's the sports caster right there.
Oh, that's hard.
Yep, that could be a sport. So let's talk about food.
Oh, yeah.
I know this is everyone's favorite part of the show, the
Oh,
food.
yeah. We're ready.
So, like I mentioned before, when you're going to the South, you're going to notice a lot of barbecue. Barbecue ribs, hot links. That's a biscuit. That's a bowl of beans, chili beans. Yep. So by a show of hands, who likes Southern barbecue? A lot of hands are raised. A lot of hands are raised. If everyone has extra hands, you could raise them too. That would count as extra. But yeah, yep. So let's talk about more.
No food.
Let me introduce you guys to the po' boy sandwich.
Yes.
A little baguette, and then you have fried shrimp, and you have your choice of veggies underneath.
Food.
What is that?
Po' boy sandwiches could be as long as 12 inches.
Wow.
You like po' boy sandwich?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go, a little po' boy sandwich. Let's talk about more.
Oh.
When you go to Mississippi, this is called comeback sauce. They put this in a lot of things. So if I remember correctly, comeback sauce is a combination of mayonnaise and chili sauce with an addition of any of the following: ketchup, lemon juice, smoked paprika, hot sauce, garlic, salt, Worcestershire sauce, mustard, black peppers, and onion powder.
That is way
Wow.
too much. Wow. Wow.
And it's a hot commodity down there.
Wow.
You'll find huge jars of these things in restaurants.
Really?
Hmm? Yeah. Southern barbecue for your po' boy sandwich. I'm just saying, if you got meats, there you go. Let's talk about more food.
Oh, my God.
Have you guys heard of a mud pie?
Yes.
This is it. Yeah. So basically, the base is a crust of chocolate cookies, topped with a layered dense, flourless cake with velvet chocolate pudding.
Nice.
The reason why it's called a mud pie is because the idea is that it looks like a mud pie.
Looks like mud. Huh?
Yep. Legend has it people would make mud pies as kids, and they would pretend they made it for dessert for dinner that night.
How fun.
Yeah, so by a show of hands, would you ever try a mud pie sandwich right here?
Yes, I would.
Despite the fact that it looks like mud? I saw one of you just nodded. No. You wouldn't?
I used to make mud pies.
So you would try this.
I would.
All right.
Ice cream on it.
So let's talk about some famous people. Recognize this actor?
Wow.
No.
No?
Oh, you know
It's Morgan Freeman. It's Morgan Freeman.
Yes.
The man with the most beautiful voice.
Yes.
Man, if I had a voice like that, I would make a career in voice acting. So yeah, Morgan Freeman.
Like that?
He is originally from Memphis, Tennessee, but he moved to Mississippi. Spent a lot of time over there. So yeah, he lives in Charleston to be exact.
Johnson now?
Yeah.
Wow.
And over there, he actually owns a restaurant called Ground Zero.
Wow.
And again, this information was provided me by our dear friend Barbara.
Wow.
And if I remember correctly, I think she met him.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Just to give you guys an idea of how long Morgan Freeman's been around, when I was a kid, he used to be on a children's show called The Electric Company.
What was that?
He was on The Electric Company when I was.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I heard about that.
Easy reader.
Okay, there you go. Anyone seen Electric Company?
I have.
Morgan Freeman was on it.
Yeah.
Long before he became a very well-known face and having a well-known voice. I remember him from a few other movies. So let's talk about more famous people. Remember when I said Archie and Eli Manning?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. So these guys, they reside in Mississippi, and as it turns out, these guys have their own restaurant too. It's a football themed restaurant. I think I put it on the next slide.
Right.
Here it is, Manning's.
Nice.
So Manning's
Straight
is
to the point.
yeah, straight to the point, you guys. They graduated from college in Mississippi, and they ended up establishing a restaurant in Mississippi.
Nice.
So anytime you go into Manning's, you will see football games practically 24/7. That's the whole point, because they're a football family. Why not make a football themed restaurant? They might as well have put a giant football on top of the building.
You guys know what team Eli Manning played for?
I don't remember.
The Giants.
Oh yeah, Giants. Oh, of course. And I don't even watch sports.
I do.
So here's another.
Yes. All sports.
Oh my gosh. So let's talk about more famous people.
I do go for it.
Recognize this face? You guys didn't recognize him?
Who might that be, Jeremy?
That is Jim Henson.
Jim Henson.
He was well known for making the Muppets. Recognize Kermit the Frog next to him? He was one of the puppeteers behind Kermit the Frog. Kermit the Frog. Yeah. So yeah, I was surprised to know that this man right here, he's from a town called Arkabatula in Mississippi. So yeah, that was a bit of a surprise for me too. So I don't know if you guys watched the Muppets growing up.
I do.
Yep, I remember watching the Muppets. I remember watching Sesame Street and all that, but I remember his work on the Muppets. So yeah, the funny story is that he was the puppeteer for pretty much a lot of the characters that you see. Kermit the Frog, Miss Piggy, Gonzo. I can go on. I can go on. So yeah, sad bit of news. When he passed away in the 1990s, there was a lot of dedication to him, as I'm about to show on the next slide. Disney poured out their heart and made a newspaper strip with Mickey Mouse consoling Kermit when Jim Henson died. So because Disney and Jim Henson worked together very closely at times, this is what was their little dedication and thank you. Rest in peace, Jim. Yeah, rest in peace, Jim.
Sad but cool.
And on a lighter note, let's talk about another famous person. Recognize this man?
Michael Jackson.
What?
Michael Jackson.
Nope.
Ah!
This is James Earl Jones.
Did you say Michael Jackson?
Yeah, he said that.
Oh, brother of Michael Jackson.
Yeah. This is James Earl Jones. He's an actor
See?
and well known for certain movies that I enjoyed growing up. Let's talk about that.
Does he have a-
Yup. He was Mufasa in Lion King.
Hey.
What was the famous line? Everywhere the light touches is your kingdom. Yep, he was the deep baritone voice of Mufasa. And there's another thing that most people know him for, Darth Vader. Now, just to be clear, he was not the man in the suit. He was the man voicing the man in the suit.
Yeah.
So he would have that famous, powerful voice that a lot of people look to as a template for villains. So when Luke said that, when Luke Skywalker said, "You killed my father," he says, "No, I am your father." That was James Earl Jones. Yep. So anytime you watch these movies, listen closely for these voices. It's the same guy, James Earl Jones.
Wow, from Lion King to Darth Vader.
Oh, here's a fun fact. Remember when they remade Lion King?
Yes.
James Earl Jones reprised his role.
Did he?
Yep.
Did he?
Yeah. He played the same character in the remake
Of Lion King?
Yeah. as Mufasa. Yeah. Fun fact. So now let's talk about the people. So here's a physical map of Mississippi. Here's Jackson, both the capital and the largest city. So as of 2019, there are over 2 million people living in Mississippi, with most of them living in Jackson. Now, the most common ancestries are German, English, Scottish, and Italian. Those are some of the most common ancestries. The largest demographic is German. So it is found that of everyone who lives in Mississippi, at least 40% can trace their ancestry back to Germany. So yeah, doesn't sound like a whole lot, but hey, they're everywhere.
That's cool.
All these ancestries. Let's conclude today's class. So you have this Mississippi license plate. It's
You
great.
got me today. No sticker.
Yep. I was about to say, hate to disappoint you, but there's
Carmen.
no expiration date. See where it says place sticker here? Not today. Not today.
It's not all right.
Not today.
Yes, it is. Yes, today.
So let's conclude today's class, ladies and gentlemen. Mississippi has a lot to offer. You'd be surprised how many writers come out of there, like William Faulkner. A lot of entertainers like Jim Henson. So anytime you go to Mississippi, you never know who you're going to rub shoulders with, who's going to be famous down the line. So thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you down on the road.
See you on the road, man.
See you guys.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, Carmen.